Hi, I'm Defragmenter, and I'm going to show you an awesome knot called the Pratt Knot. Now, a little personal disclaimer up front, I love this knot, and in a few moments you're going to see why. It was made famous by Don Shelby, the American news anchor, but it was actually created by a guy called Jerry Pratt. So let's get into it. Start with your tie turned inside out. You want the seam to be facing outwards. For most people, your starting position should look like this. If you've got a neck like Dwayne Johnson, then you might need to experiment a little. Take both ends and cross them over. The thin end goes on top. Now take the wide end and thread it down through this gap in front of your collar button. Grab it from underneath and bring it all the way down. Next, take the wide end and bring it across the front, horizontally. Swap hands. Now take your forefinger and put it underneath, like this. This will help make the finishing knot that little bit easier to do, as you'll see in a few moments. Take the wide end and thread it around the back and underneath. Bring it up through the gap in front of your collar button and thread it all the way through. So, as you can see, your forefinger has created a loop. What you need to do is take the wide end and thread it down through that loop. Hold the narrow end and slide the knot up, adjusting it as you go. And what you end up with is a nice, crisp, symmetrical knot. One of the sharpest looking knots around. Now, the first step is a very important one, and it's one you do not want to get wrong. This should be your starting position. You want your tie to sit like this. Try to make the length of the wide end about 2/3 of the total length of the tie, and the thin end about 1/3. If you start like this, everything else is a piece of cake. Now, cross each end over. The wide end goes over the top. And this is how much length you want to have left on the narrow end. For most people, that'll be around 4 to 6 inches, or 15 centimeters, or thereabouts. Take the wide end of the tie with your left hand and feed it through this opening here, around the back, and bring it all the way through like this. Now, again with your left hand, hold the wide end of the tie like this. Wrap it all the way around the back and swap hands. Now you'll notice that the back of the tie is facing outwards. That's exactly how we want it to be for now. With the wide end now in your right hand, feed it down through this opening here and pull it through all the way. Now, this is a good point to stop and take stock of where things are at. This is how your tie should look at this stage. The back of the tie should still be facing outward. And you should also be able to see this triangle here. This is the back end of your tie knot. This is what will give your knot that nice, full-bodied shape once you're finished. If yours doesn't look like a triangle at the moment, don't stress. Try to mold and shape it into one before moving on to the next step. This will make your knot look a lot sharper and more triangular at the end. Okay, here's where the magic happens. Take your left forefinger, put it on the knot like this, and leave it there. With your right hand, wrap the wide end around the knot from right to left. And then pick it up from behind. Leave your forefinger where it is. With your right hand, push the wide end through this opening again, from the bottom and up through the gap. Grab it on the other side and pull it through. We're almost there, guys. Now, notice here that your forefinger has created a little tunnel. What you need to do is thread your tie down through this tunnel, just like this. Now all you need to do is adjust and tighten it, gradually pulling the knot up, alternating between the long end and the short end of the tie. And what you should have is a nice, sharp, symmetrical knot, also known as the Windsor Knot. It's easier than it looks. Hold the tie like this. Grab the thin end and wrap it around your hand twice. Note the circular shape you just made? Now with your right hand, pull out the inner loop from inside that circle and drop it on the outside. As you're doing that, pull out the next layer from inside the circle and pull it up like this. And there you go. What you should end up with is a nice triangular knot. Here it is again from a first-person perspective. Holding the tie like this, wrap the thin end around your hand twice. With your right hand now, pull out the inner loop, drop it on the outside. Grab the next layer from inside, pulling it up as you go. And voila! You'll be looking sharp and you'll never have to be late for a meeting ever again. If you want to stand out from the crowd, but you don't want to make it glaringly obvious, this knot is perfect, as you'll see in a few moments. The Prince Albert uses up a bit of material, so your starting position is going to need to look like this. I've got the thin end of the tie sitting around the bottom of my rib cage. Take both ends and cross them over. The wide end goes on top. Now bring the wide end around the back. And hold it like this. With your other hand, put 2 fingers here to hold everything into place, and wrap the wide end around them. Drop it, pick it up from behind, and bring it around the back to where you started. Now this is a double-tiered knot, so what we're going to do is add another layer. And to do that, we're going to bring the wide end around the front again. Drop it, pick it up from behind, and bring it around the back. So what we've got here are our 2 loops, our 2 tiers. And we also have a little tunnel, which we're going to use for our finishing knot. Take the wide end, bring it around the back, and thread it up through this opening here. Grab it on the other side, and bring it all the way through. Now thread the wide end down through that tunnel. Grab it with your other hand, and pull it all the way down. Slide the knot up, adjusting it as you go. And what you end up with is this suave, multi-tiered effect. It's a pretty informal knot, works with any type of collar, and it adds a nice asymmetrical effect to your look. This knot is tied with the thin end, so before you do anything, what you'll need to do is position the wide end where you want it to be when you're finished. And that should be around your belt buckle. This is my right hand, and this is my left hand. This video is mirrored to make it easier to follow. I'm going to take the wide end and pinch it to make a little dimple here. Now I'm going to cross each end over. The thin end goes on top. With my right hand, I'm going to take the thin end and thread it up through this opening here, between the tie and my neck. I'm going to call that the neck hole. grab it on the other side, and pull it through. Now with the thin end still in my right hand, I'm going to take it around the back and grab it with my other hand. I'm then going to take it up and thread it down the neck hole from the front, like this, from the top down. Grab it from underneath and bring it all the way through. Okay, so what we have here is the foundation of our knot. If you know how to tie a Windsor knot, this will look very familiar to you. The next step, I've got the thin end in my right hand, and I'm going to wrap it around the front of the knot, like this. I'm going to thread it around the back, and up through the neck hole, and bring it all the way through. Now, notice what I've just done. I've created a loop just here. What I'm going to do is thread the thin end down through that loop, grab it from underneath, and bring it out through the bottom. And in doing that, I've just created a second loop, up the top here. So I've got two loops, one down the bottom and one up top. Try to keep them loose. Don't tighten them up just yet, because we're going to use this little tunnel here in a moment. What I'm going to do is take the thin end around the back, like this, and thread it through this top loop. Grab it on the other side and gently bring it through. Notice here I'm tightening it with both hands, just to keep everything nice and even. You want to try to keep a balance between these three components of the knot. It's all about proportionality. Now's a good time to cinch it up into place. And you can do that by holding the knot and pulling down on the wide end with your other hand. This excess material on the thin end, you can just tuck that under your collar. And voila! You're ready to steal the show. I'm going to show you how to tie a sensational layered knot, known as the Eldredge knot. Now this knot is tied with the thin end rather than the wide end. So to start off, you'll want to position the wide end of the tie where you want it to be when you're finished. I'm going to position it near my belt buckle. That's where I want it to be when I'm done. Okay, this is my right hand, and this is my left hand. This video is mirrored to make it easier to follow. I'm going to take the wide end and pinch it here to make a little dimple. Now I'm going to cross each end over. The thin end goes on top. Next, I'm going to take the thin end and bring it around the back of the tie like this. Then I'm going to bring it up and thread it down through this opening here between the tie and my neck. Grab it from underneath and pull it all the way down. Now, I'm holding the thin end in my right hand, and I'm going to wrap it around the front like this. Swap hands, and bring it up through this opening, from the bottom up, and bring it all the way through. Okay, I've got the thin end in my right hand again. Pull it nice and tight. What I'm going to do now is wrap it around the back of the knot and grab it with my other hand. I'm going to keep this last bit loose. What you want to see here is this loop, because what I'm going to do next is take the thin end and thread it up through that loop. Now the best way to do this is to use both hands, just to keep everything in order. And tighten that nice and firm. Next, I'm going to take the thin end and thread it around the back and down like this. So I've got that sitting on my right hand side again. Now I'm going to bring it up the front and thread it down through this opening so that it ends up on my left hand side. Again, I want to keep this last bit loose because I'm going to thread the thin end up through this loop I've just created, using both hands to tighten it up. This excess material here we don't need, so I'm just going to tuck that under my collar. That'll be nicely hidden away. You can adjust the knot by holding it with one hand and pulling down on the wide end. And voila, the Eldredge knot. Intricate and not that hard to do. The tie knot I'm about to show you is the amazing rosebud knot. This will take your outfit to a whole new level. To do this knot properly, you're going to want to give yourself loads of slack on the thin end of your tie. As a general rule, start with the tip of the wide end around your belly button. Now don't worry if this looks a little weird, because when we tighten the knot at the end, it'll drop down to your belt buckle, which is where you want it to be. To start off, we're going to take the wide end, pinch it, and make a little dimple right here in the middle. Now we're going to cross both ends over, and we're going to make sure the thin end is on top. Now, with the thin end, thread it underneath and up through this opening here. Grab it from up top and bring it all the way through. Next, we're going to bring the thin end around the back and out through the other side, like this. And then we're going to bring it back up and thread it down through that opening. Grab it from below and bring it all the way down. So what we've got here is the inside of our rosebud knot. Now, with the thin end in your right hand, bring it across the front. Pick it up with your left hand, thread it underneath and up through this opening. Now you should be able to see a little loop at the front here. What we want to do is thread the thin end down through that loop. And what we end up with is a kind of inverted Windsor knot, with the thin end sitting on the outside. Okay, now for the fun part. What we're going to do is take the thin end with our right hand and fold it in half, like this. We want to fold it in half, and we want to hold it like this. Then we're going to bring it up and over. And down through this opening. Grab it on the other side and bring it down like this. And notice I'm now holding it in my left hand. So this knot that's starting to form here, we want to keep it nice and tight, because what we're going to do next is bring the thin end around the bottom and loop it up the other side. Push it down through this opening again, grab it from underneath, and bring it back down. Now, at this point it looks like a dog's breakfast. But stay with me. In a few moments, it's all going to come together. We're going to take the thin end around the bottom again. Loop it back up the other side. and thread it down through this opening. If we fan these 3 loops out a bit, we'll notice our rosebud knot starting to take shape. This excess material that's left over on the thin end can be tucked in under the collar. We don't need that anymore. Adjust the knot and pull it up to the collar. You might want to flare those loops out a little bit more. And there you have it, the rosebud knot. This is one of those knots that's tied with the thin end, so you're going to want to make that longer than the wide end. I've got the wide end positioned just above my belt buckle. That's where I want it to be when I'm finished. Take the wide end and pinch it here to make a little dimple. Now take both ends and cross them over. You want the thin end to be on top. Bring the thin end around the back and thread it up through this opening. Grab it from the top and pull it through, like this. With your right hand, thread it around the back. And grab it with your left hand. Then bring it up, like this, and thread it down through this opening. Grab it from underneath and pull it through. And what you should end up with is this triangular looking knot. This is going to be the base of your knot, the foundation stone. What you need to do next is take the thin end in your right hand and wrap it around the front of the knot. Grab it with your other hand and bring it around the back and up, like this. Then drape it over the front and onto your right hand side. Next, thread it around the back. And keep this part nice and loose. You want to leave a little gap here, because what we're going to do is thread the thin end through that gap. And notice here that I'm tightening it with both hands. That just helps you to keep everything nice and centered and where you want it to be. Now you don't want to make this too tight. Keep it nice and loose. And then hitch it up to your collar button. This excess material here can be tucked under your collar. That'll be nicely hidden away. To start off, position your tie like this, so that the narrow end is sitting up higher than the wide end. Cross both ends over to make an X. The wide end goes over the top. Hold the center of the X, and with your other hand, bring the wide end of the tie behind that X. The back of the tie should be facing outwards like this. Now, take the wide end, bring it up, and thread it down through this opening here. Pull it tight, but not too tight. And you should see a knot starting to form here. The back of the wide end should again be facing outwards. Take your forefinger and place it on that knot. And with your other hand, bring the wide end across the front, like this. Drop it, pick it up from behind, and thread it up through this opening. Now, the reason I put my forefinger here is because I wanted to create a little tunnel. What you need to do now is thread the wide end down through that tunnel and pull it through. Now, bonus tip. To get that perfect triangular shape, pinch the bottom of the knot and pull the tops apart to make it look nice and symmetrical. Hold the narrow end and slide the knot up, adjusting it as you go. If this was helpful, please like the video and let me know in the comments down below. That would mean an awful lot to me. Thank you so much for watching.